Seraphine counted the steps to the gate. 1, 2, 3. She did not look back. She had decided that before the herald finished reading the decree, she would not look back, and she would not cry, and she would not give the court of Ashwood the satisfaction of watching her break. 47 steps. That was all it took to walk out of the only home she had ever known. The gate closed behind her with a sound like a book being shut. Now, she had felt him before she saw him. That was how the fated bond worked. A pull, low in the chest, like gravity deciding to change direction. She had walked into the great hall that night in her good dress, the blue one that her mother had sewn from river cloth, and the pull hit her so hard she stopped walking mid-step. Half the pack felt it ripple through the room. Wolves looked up from their plates. The candles seemed to lean. She followed the pull and found him at the altar. Kalian, the Alpha King, tall enough to block the light from the torch behind him, with eyes that were gold when he looked at her, and cold, almost immediately after. She stood there while the bond ignited between them, warm and certain and ancient, and she thought, he feels this too. She could see it in the way his jaw tightened, the way his hands, which had been relaxed at his sides, slowly closed into fists. He stepped back. That was all. No words, no acknowledgement, just one step back, and then he turned to his advisor and said something low that she could not hear, and the hall slowly remembered how to breathe, and Seraphine stood at the altar alone and understood that something terrible was going to happen. 2 days later, a herald read the decree. She picked up her bag. She counted to 47. She did not look back. Beyond the pale border, there was nothing. That was what the pack stories said. Beyond the border was wilderness, and wolves who went into that wilderness did not come back. The stories were wrong about one thing. Seraphine walked for 3 days with nothing but a bag of books and a loaf of bread that went hard on the second morning. On the third day, hungry and exhausted and so angry she could feel it in her back teeth, she sat down against a pine tree and looked up at the moon. The moon looked back. She felt it, a different pull from the one in the great hall, quieter and much older, like being recognized by something that had been waiting a very long time. She followed it. Deep in the forest, past a river that ran silver even in daylight, there was a stone building that did not appear on any Ashwood map. Inside it, 7 women in gray robes were sitting in a circle. They looked up when she walked in. None of them seemed surprised. "You took longer than expected," said the eldest. "We thought you would come at 19. You are 22. "I was not ready at 19, Seraphine said. The woman smiled. "No, you were waiting for a reason." The moon sanctum. The packs had declared them myth centuries ago, a story to tell children about why you did not wander past the border. The packs had been wrong. They were real, and old, and they trained her for 3 years in ways that had no simple names. She learned to read the moon's light the way others read letters. She learned to move through the dark without making sound. She learned where her own fear lived inside her body, and how to speak to it calmly, the way you speak to a dog that is growling. She learned that grief does not leave. It simply gets smaller as you grow larger around it. She grew very large around it. On the night of the 3rd winter, when the longest dark of the year settled over the forest, the moon did something it had not done in 400 years. The light came down in a column, straight and solid, and settled around Seraphine's head like a hand placing a crown. Because that was exactly what it was. The moon crown, solid silver-white light that cooled into something real, something she could touch. It was warm at the edges and heavier than it looked. The bond with Kalian flared the moment it touched her. Across 3 years of silence, across the pale border, and 47 steps and 1 shut gate, she felt him. Not warmth, something older and more painful, like a scar being pressed. She gripped the edge of the crown until her knuckles went white. Then she released it. She sent no message to the Ashwood King. She let him wonder. 3 years was a long time to learn patience. She rode through the Ashwood gates at noon. Not at night, not in secret. Noon, with the sun directly overhead, and the moon crown catching its light, like it had been designed to make a specific point. The market stopped. A woman setting out fabric dropped her whole bolt. A child with a basket of apples went still, and the apples rolled across the cobblestones, and nobody bent to pick them up. Seraphine rode through all of it without adjusting her pace. She knew Kalian was watching from his tower. She had always known when he was watching. The bond told her, whether she wanted it to or not. She did not look up. She looked straight ahead, through the market, through the inner gates, up to the palace steps, where his second stood waiting, with the careful expression of a man who had prepared very many speeches and was not sure which one to give. She saved him the trouble. "Tell the king I am here on sanctum business," she said. "I have intelligence about the northern threat. I will meet him in the throne room in 1 hour." The second opened his mouth. "1 hour," she said again, pleasantly, and walked inside. The throne room. He was standing when she entered. That surprised the court, because the Alpha King did not stand for visitors. He stood for no one, but he was standing, and for just a moment, before she could stop it, she felt the bond pull toward him the way it always had, low in the chest, gravity changing direction. She stopped 10 feet away. The distance between them had a weight to it. He said, "Seraphine." She said, "Moon Sovereign will do." Not cruel. She was not trying to be cruel. She was being precise, which was something she had learned to value in the 3 years of becoming someone the moon would crown. His name for her was the name of the girl who had walked into that great hall in a blue dress and felt the world rearrange itself and been thrown out 2 days later with a bag and 47 steps. That girl was still inside her, but she was not the one standing here. He flinched, a small thing, barely visible. She watched it happen. She had thought this moment would feel like winning. It felt like pressing a bruise to prove it still hurt, which told her something, and she filed it away to think about later, in private, when she was not standing in the middle of a throne room with 24 wolves watching. "I have intelligence," she said, "about the northern border. Something is moving, something the Sanctum has been tracking for 8 months. I need your Pax forces. You need my crown's authority to cross the Sanctum's border. I propose an alliance." Silence. Then his advisor leaned close and whispered something. Kalian did not look at the advisor. He kept his eyes on her. "Agreed," he said. "Just that. Just the one word." The meeting lasted 2 hours. They sat across a table with maps between them and spoke about troop numbers and timelines and the geography of a threat that neither of them had caused. They were professional. They were precise. The bond pulsed between them like a second heartbeat that neither of them mentioned, and the advisors on both sides kept their eyes on the maps with great dedication. He came to her room in the hour before dawn. She was awake. She had not slept well since arriving in Ashwood. The bond was loud here, louder than it had been in the forest, as though the palace itself remembered what she had been to this place. He knocked, an actual knock, not a decree delivered by a herald. She opened the door. He looked like a man who had been practicing something difficult for a long time and had still not gotten it right. His eyes were gold in the dim light of the corridor. She had forgotten, or tried to forget, what his eyes looked like when they went gold. "I need to explain," he said. She stepped back and let him in, because she had also been practicing something difficult. The patience that came from 3 winters in a stone building past the pale border. She sat in the chair by the window. He stood. He did not seem to know what to do with the space of a room that was not a throne room. He told her. The prophecy that his advisor had brought him, 2 days after the bond ignited. A warning that the Alpha King's fated mate carried a mark that would draw northern darkness to Ashwood like a torch drawing moths. That keeping her would destroy the pack. That the only way to protect her was to send her away, beyond the reach of what was coming, and never explain why, because if she knew, she would come back. He had believed it. He had made the calculation in the cold, efficient way that kings make calculations, and he had decided, and he had sent the herald, and he had stood at his tower window and watched a girl in a blue dress count 47 steps to his gate and walk out of it without looking back. "I thought I was protecting you," he said. The room was very quiet. "You could have told me," she said. 4 words. That was all she had, after everything. 4 words, and the 3 years behind them, and the 47 steps, and the crown on her head that she had earned in ways he would never fully understand. He had no answer. She had known he would not. She had not asked for an answer. She had said the truest thing she had, and now it lived in the room between them, and there was nothing to do with it except let it exist. "Get some sleep," she said. "We ride north in 4 days." He left. She sat by the window for a long time after, watching the dark outside slowly turn gray, and she did not cry. But it was a different kind of not crying than it had been at 22, walking to a gate. This was not the not crying of someone holding themselves together by counting steps. This was the not crying of someone who had already done her crying, all of it, alone in a forest with a moon overhead, and had nothing left to shed. She was not healed, but she was whole. There was a difference. They rode north together on the 4th day. The first time she and Kalian moved as a unit in battle, it happened without planning. She read the moonlight and saw the attack coming from the east ridge before anyone else did. She called out the direction. He moved without hesitating, redirecting the pack's formation in seconds, and the attack broke against a line that was ready for it. He trusted her call. She had not expected that. She had expected him to hesitate, to check with his second, to do what kings did when a woman told them something they had not already decided. He did not hesitate. He moved, and the pack moved with him, and the battle turned. When the fighting was over, when the northern threat had broken, and the wounded were being tended, and the sun was coming up cold and clean over the ridge, she was aware of him standing near her, not beside her, near her. A careful distance, like a man who has broken something expensive and is not sure if he is allowed to stand in the same room as it anymore. "You saw it early," he said. "The moon sight," she said. "The sanctum trained it. It saved the eastern flank." "Yes." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "What else did they train?" She looked at him. "Ask me again," she said, "when you have time to hear the whole answer." Something shifted in his face. Not a flinch this time, something quieter, like a door opening a small amount and stopping there, waiting. The moon sanctum sent a message on the 7th day of her stay in Ashwood. Her duties called her back. The eldest needed her for the winter rituals. The crown was needed at the sanctum's own border, where 3 young wolves were waiting to be tested. She was not Ashwood's. She had not been Ashwood's for 3 years. The crown on her head belonged to the moon, not to any pack, and certainly not to any king. She found Kalian in the corridor outside the war room. "I leave in 2 days," she said. He stopped walking. "The sanctum needs me. This is my life now. Not a throne room, not a pack. I move when the moon moves. I go where the work is. I will not be a Luna who sits in a palace and waits for her alpha to come home." He said nothing. "I am willing," she said, carefully, "to try. To find out what this bond is when it belongs to 2 people who choose each other, rather than a prophecy that chose them. But you would need to learn to ask instead of decide. You would need to understand that I have a life that is mine, and it does not fit inside these walls." She was not asking his permission. She made that clear with every word. She was telling him what was true, what she would and would not bend. He was silent for long enough that she prepared to walk away. She was good at that now. "Teach me," he said, "how to ask." 3 words, simple and true, and more difficult for him than any battle she had watched him fight. She looked at him for a moment. "Start small," she said. "Ask me something small today. We will go from there." She kept the crown. She kept the sanctum, and the forest past the pale border, and the silver river, and the 7 women in gray robes who had been waiting for a girl with a reason. She kept all of it. What she added, slowly, without ceremony, without a herald or a decree, was this: a man who was learning to knock before entering rooms, who had stopped standing at the head of every space she occupied, who asked, now, where she was going, and then said, "Be careful," instead of "come back." The pack called her Moon Sovereign. When they said it, there was something in their voices that had never been there for the girl in the blue dress, something that sounded like genuine respect, which is different from awe and very different from fear. Seraphine did not count steps anymore. She had stopped needing to.